Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strick and Roll. I'm your host, Shwin, and this is episode 66. I'm joined by a first-time guest of the pod. His name is Jonah Maves. He writes about the Timberwolves over at Zone Coverage, Minnesota. Jonah, how you doing?
I'm doing terrific.
Good to hear. And the Wolves themselves seem to be doing a little bit more terrific than they had to start the season. We're going to talk about that. But before we do, I do have to make a few announcements. First being that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you maybe watch this podcast. If you are and you've not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it. We've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There for the tiers, there's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strick and Roll, this pod right here, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business, and you get access to Strictly NFL, a podcast hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak, which, you guessed it, is about the NFL. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. This comes with a variety of additional benefits, like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially going to podcasts alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props, head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. So, Timberwolves are now 10-10. They absolutely destroyed the Lakers last night in thoroughly dominant fashion, to be quite honest. I believe the final score was something 109-80 or wherever the hell it was. It's been a weird start to the season, though. They've had some really bad losses, quite frankly. But they've also now, I think, strung together some strong defensive performances here. I guess just overall, forgetting, obviously there was a seismic trade that involved my New York Knickerbockers as well that was made, but forgetting that part of it for now, just with the where how do you feel about this team now that you're a quarter of the way through the season, 10-10? Is this what you expected earlier in the season, or is this even weirder than you expected?
I didn't know what to expect because the trade just caught everything by so much surprise. And I mean, there's only so much you can pull from preseason. Like, there was some good stuff to see in preseason, but yet again, Randle didn't play in preseason. It was just seeing a lot of Donte, seeing how he fit in. A lot of it feels like the first season after Gobert was traded for in terms of connectiveness, because everyone is, I mean, it's starting to get a little bit better. I mean, as it should 20 games into the season, but just the start of the season, everything with connectivity from defensive rotations to, I mean, even players just knowing how to play with each other on the court. And I mean, the offense has had weird stagnant parts throughout Finch's entire tenure because he relies on the flow offense and the team just doesn't seem to have the high enough IQ to be as dynamic as possible within that. But it's good to see a little bit of a corner starting to get turned because, I mean, there were going to be some growing pains with a trade that late into the season, into the off season, regardless. But still, it's not something you want to see with how the West has been to start the season.
Yeah, I mean that's I think the toughest part of this is it's one thing to be in the Eastern Conference and having some weird up and downs as you start to kind of get guys acclimated, find cohesion. The Knicks have definitely had their own issues to start the year. But at 12-8 in the East, you feel a little bit better than you do at 10-10 in the West, where I think even as it stands now, the Timberwolves are 11th in the conference. So if the playoffs were to start today, which obviously they don't start today, they would be on the outside looking in, even on the play-in. Personally, I still feel pretty strongly that they're going to end up being a very good team by the end of the year. They have a lot of pieces that, and I think this is what makes this team extremely difficult. I mean, we can just get into the trade now, because the thing that just doesn't make any sense to me on this team, and I think complicates everything, is Julius Randle. Like, I don't see how he fits next to Gobert, which was always my issue with like that trade. Like, I can kind of wrap my brain around the finances and the benefits of splitting up Towns' contract, and Randall's a potential expiring, which we can talk about that too, because I don't fully think, I'm not totally sure he opts out. And I get all that, but just from a fit perspective, whatever. And I know there were frustrations with Towns, and I totally understand why. Obviously, he was the number one pick, and he was drafted to be a generational talent. And as good as he is, he's never really lived up to that expectation of a generational type player. But and look, he is not the from a standstill create offense, draw attention, kick out type of stuff that Julius does, but he does stay out of the way, and he does open up the floor in a way that Julius quite doesn't. And I think he is not a good defender, but he is a more committed defender on a team level than Julius Randle. I think his body language is about 7,000 times better than Julius Randle's. And then, forgetting that intangible stuff, like, again, just from a basketball perspective, everything Randle does, and he's a good player. Randle's a good player for sure, but all the value he provides requires him to be handling the ball, have the ball in his hands. And that means Anthony Edwards has to be more off the ball. That means Jaden McDaniels has to develop as an off-ball spacer, threat. That means that Rudy Gobert has a lot to figure out of, all right, how the hell exactly do I play off of Julius Randle and get ready for his 75-mile-an-hour pinball passes out of nowhere? And it's like, I think there's just a lot of stuff there. And then in my head, when I'm like, all right, well, what if you just like removed Randle from this team? Like, what if you just take him, throw him out? Who knows where he goes? Whatever. Let's just say you send him home, for all I know. All of a sudden, now I'm like, okay, now I like these pieces a lot more. Like, I like that Naz Reid potentially starts games. I like that you can experiment with more Jaden McDaniels at the 4. I like that it now clearly opens up minutes in the perimeter rotation to use Donte in ways that I think he's a little bit stifled now, because he's often in lineups where, it's like when he comes in, it's like, all right, now is kind of the time where Randle or Anthony Edwards is the clear cut, like it's their time to cook. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't really like the flow of their subs and the rotations. But if you take Randle out, all of a sudden I like it a lot more. And I think all these pieces make more sense. And I think, you could even throw Donte in a starting lineup potentially if you have Conley, Donte, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert. Like, that could at least just be a lineup. There's just more stuff you can do. And I don't know. Like, that's where I'm at with this trade, where I get the logic. I think you should probably give Tim Connolly time to like make sense of this roster and make moves, but I just don't see a future for Randle with this team.
Yeah, I mean, that's the funniest thing about the trade is you can watch so much of a team, but you don't realize those little nuances of a player until it's on the other side. So it's funny to see Wolves fans and watchers see all the Randall things, and then Knicks fans get all the Cat things. I mean, it's like you said with the off-ball stuff, it's been really... like you said, Cat's not a crazy defender, but I mean, just the effort, the attention to detail enough to actually try. It's just tricky. I mean, that was the thing about the offense is it's always going to be tough to build around Gobert on the offense. I mean,
Yeah,
that's even with last year's team. I mean, it's easy to say like, oh, they'd be better if they had Cat still. Like, we don't know. There were still so many issues within Cat, and like Cat's turnover numbers are down significantly because he actually has space to operate. there's only so much you can tell with how far this team can get with Gobert on the team. I mean, that was a concern with the Jazz team too. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know how far the offense can get, and Randle has that creation upside. He has some potential there, but I mean, there's so many things within it that are so tricky with. I mean, the jump passes are crazy. Yeah.
The spinning jump passes.
Yeah, there were some good ones versus the Lakers. I'm not gonna lie, but you live. It's live or die. It's either an assist or it's into the third row or it's not even caught. But like you said with the lineups and stuff, I mean, that's the nice thing about having the 20 game sample is, I mean, Finch can be a little stubborn with moving the rotation around. He really likes to prefer very specific players, but at least as of late, it seems like they're trying to get players in better situations, kind of around Randall, Gobert, and Ant, which I think is honestly the best way to kind of do it, is just try to structure as best as you can. But the biggest concern has to be that the starting lineup isn't producing much of a incredible net rating. Not that it needs to be like anything insane like the Nuggets, but you need to at least be winning the minutes a little bit more when you have your starting lineup out on the court. But I mean, the best thing is there's pieces there to kind of toggle with, like the Conley starting. I mean, when Conley plays better, Mike Conley is such a big part of this team. When Mike Conley plays better and he can get the two man game with Gobert, or even just be a ball mover. That's all you need from him. Knock down open threes, be a ball mover. Don't make dumb turnovers. Like, that's all you really need. As long as he's going, that makes Donte. I mean, they tried to throw Donte into this point guard role, and that's not who he is. He's not going to be good there. His turnover rate is insane when he steps inside the arc. I just think you need to pave better ways to get. I'm optimistic with Donte. I mean, he has a pretty simple role. If you're that 3-point reliant too, you're going to be streaky regardless. I mean, that's all he was last year with the Knicks, was just kind of a roller coaster. But I just think if you build around the fringes, I think it'll just kind of make it easier to live with some of the Randall stuff. I mean, I feel fine with the offense, honestly. I wish he was a quicker processor, but that's just kind of who he is, for good or for bad, which is kind of a lot of stuff with Randall on offense, which is really the tricky part. It could be a really good thing that he takes his time, tries to read the floor, tries to read his matchup with a little like simple pump fake to get the drive, or but then also there's just situations where the ball is moving and he just stands there and reads the court, and it's like, you just get rid of the ball. Come on, keep it moving.
He's never. I think the most frustrating thing with him would be the passes where you're like on the wing, and you have the open swing pass to the corner, and it's never just a quick decision. It's never.
Or you get a ball fake and then they catch up, and then he finally decides he should pass it over or something. It's
the quick decision processing stuff with him was always the biggest frustration, because it's not there. And in theory, you look at Julius Randle and you're like, okay, this fucking big strapping guy who is one of the strongest dudes in the NBA, no question. And he's always like, whatever anybody can say about him, the guy is definitely serious about his craft, and you don't have to worry about his conditioning or, what shape he's in or anything like that. But you look at him and you're like, okay, well, we could definitely use this guy as like a screen setter. And it's just, that stuff's just never been good with him, because he never sets screens to help the ball handler. It's always about, the only time he sets a good screen is when he does a dribble handoff, and that's because he can get an assist. Like, that's it. Like, it's if you're running him in pick and roll, he's gonna like half-ass the screen or slip it entirely, or use it to roll to the elbow and throw his hands up and want the ball. Like, that's just always how it is. And look, I can't lie, I'm very happy to just not have to watch that and deal with that anymore, because it was super frustrating. Like, and you just get, like, the Knicks kind of got in some ways, I think him getting injured last year, I want to say this. I don't want to victory lap him getting injured because that's not what I'm trying to do. But I think it gave them a glimpse into like, well, what can our offense be without Julius Randle? Or what does it have to be without Julius Randle? Because it changed everything about how they played. And, Isaiah Hartenstein obviously was key to that. But they basically, look, obviously Jalen Brunson was the only guy that could create a shot last year after Randle goes down. And then because of that, you have to run a lot more diverse stuff where you're depending a lot on ball movement and player movement and guys cutting off the ball, split screens, all these kind of different stuff, guard screens, right? Like all these different things. And it's a lot more flowing and there's just a lot more connectivity in how you're playing versus a very stagnant ISO heavy type thing. And I think seeing that and seeing the Knicks offense in the playoffs, which was like this, I think they finished second in offensive rating in the playoffs, second or third, whatever. They were really good offensively throughout the playoffs. When you see that, and then you compare that to the year before, where they were the second worst offensive team, I believe, in the playoffs. And obviously Julius's first year, or Tibbs's first year with Julius, where they were, the 4 seed, but then they get to the playoffs and just cannot score, can't throw the ball in the ocean. When you see that, I think that gives you some confidence of like, all right, we have to find a way to get more creation, but we don't really need Julius Randle probably. As good as he is, he might not push the ceiling and he might actually reduce our ceiling, even if he helps kind of solidify our floor as a very good team. And I think that had a lot to do with their motivation to get Cat. Obviously, the fact that Hartenstein walks, and then that Mitchell Robinson's going to be out until at least December, probably longer than that now, as we're discovering.
Who knows with him?
Yeah, just we'll see when it happens. But when that happens, it like kind of creates even more urgency to find a center. And I think even if Hartenstein comes back, the Knicks probably do that deal, because I think they wanted Cat. And it got to the point where, because of the circumstances in Minnesota with ownership and the cap and whatever, the price point for Karl-Anthony Towns got to a level where it was like, okay, this now matches up with how much we value Cat, and it made it worthwhile. But it's just tricky because I think Randle he's such an interesting player because he is really talented, and what he can give you offensively it's not. I mean, he was an all-star 3 times in New York, deservedly. He was an all-NBA player twice in New York, deservedly. Like, this isn't some joke of a player or something, but there is some limitations with him, and a lot of that just is about his mental processing. And look, he's 29 going on 30 at this point. What are you? There's probably not much upside there as far as improving those mental shortcomings in his game. But like, I just don't know what. Like, I don't know when you move him, and I don't even know what his market is, and that's always been the weirdest thing, and that's always what Knicks fans have struggled with, where we're like have spent entire off seasons concocting Randle trades, but you're like never actually sure what the hell is he worth. Like, he's this all-star, all-NBA guy, and yet you're sitting there and you're like, are we sure any other team really wants Julius Randle? And it's like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Even with the money, I mean, it's tricky to think of it just in a vacuum, but if you add the contract stuff, it's even more just mind-boggling with him being in the final year of his deal, the player options there. I mean, the whole landscape has changed with money, trades, everything. I mean, especially with the Wolves being second apron, I believe they can only they can't add any money in trades. I mean, that's just the result of the second apron. But I mean, if you want to trade him, it's like, oh, wait till the offseason, but then you have the whole player option situation. It's a tricky spot to be. I just have no idea how long he's going to be here for. I mean, I think that's the trickiest part is obviously the idea is give Ant talent to consistently keep the team competitive for as long as he's around and keep that, just extend it out as much into the future as possible, keep that safety blanket there. But at the same time, you just bring on so many other more challenges financially. And I mean, as much as there's player movement in the NBA, you still see so many teams that are good because of their continuity. They figure it out over time. Like there can be small changes, like the Cavs making a coaching change, but all those players, that starting five has been around forever. Like they have all played together. They all know what to do with each other on the court. I mean, you can make those small role player changes, optimize some things within there. But I mean, if you're moving out your second, formerly first option in Cat for Randle, and you have to figure this out all over again, it's going to take time. And I mean, the expectations are there with this team. They're in the Western Conference last year, whether they lucked in or not. Like, say whatever you want about it. The expectations are there. They had their best season in years. You just want to keep matching that. And I just don't know what the direction is with Randle's fit. And I mean, I'm remaining optimistic because it's like only 20 games into the season. You can only say so much stuff. Like there's good games, there's bad games, like any other player. But it's just tricky to find how much they want to invest in optimizing him and how much they want to invest in just figuring, because Gobert is going to be here long term, Ant's going to be here long term. It's as much as Randle might fit around some other players, you just have to come back to the situation of how much does he fit with these two other core players on the team.